I don't want your money, he said, his voice a quiet pulse of resolve. I just want to help you walk again. The words didn't just hang, they echoed, ancient and impossible, like sacrilege spoken beneath a cathedral dome, unreal, audacious, uninvited. Tiffany Ward blinked once, slow and deliberate, her fingers, elegant and lacquered in gloss, stilled around the stem of a crystal wine glass. The soft flicker of candlelight danced across the diamond studs in her ears, scattering cold fire over her steel gray gaze. He stood just beyond the velvet rope that separated servers from patrons, a line not of fabric, but of class, status. At worlds apart, a janitor's uniform clung to him, mop in one hand, dignity in the other. No desperation, no fear, only unflinching sincerity. She tilted her head, a slow, amused curl forming on her lips. You want to what? He took a step forward, leaning the mop against the wall with quiet ceremony. I want to help you walk again. The murmur of La Lumiere faded into stillness, the soft symphony of the restaurant, the ambient city hum. Beyond the glass walls, all of it retreated until only their silence remained. It pulsed, tense and sacred. Tiffany laughed, not the light, social kind. This laugh had teeth sharp, clipped, honed on power. It was the sound of someone who had forgotten what kindness felt like. You're a janitor, she said, each word delivered like a gavel. Do you offer spinal surgeries with bleach now? He didn't flinch. No. He replied gently, I offer what your doctors haven't. And what would that be? She asked, folding back into her sleek custom wheelchair, a throne of irony and elegance. Perspective, he said, lips twitching in the faintest hint of a smile. She narrowed her eyes. You have 5 seconds to walk out of this room before I call security. I don't care how many floors you've mopped. I've only mopped yours. He said softly, 3 nights a week for the last 8 months. Silence. Her hand froze midair. Caleb Miller stood rooted, his brown eyes steady and yielding, unafraid. He didn't look up at her with reverence, only truth. In those 8 months, he continued, I've seen more of you than your mirrors ever will. Her fingers hovered over the small call button near the edge of the table. You pretend you don't feel your legs, he said, softer now, almost reverent. But they move when you're angry, subtle, fast. You don't notice, but they move. Her fingers still. He nodded gently, just now. When I mentioned walking, your left foot flinched, reflexive, real. I'm calling someone, she said, voice taut like a wire stretched to its final inch. I'm not here to blackmail you. No, she spat. You're here to insult me in my own silence. I'm here because I saw someone I love crawl back from a darker place than this, he said, his voice like a whisper across raw skin. And I learned the way out, even if you're not ready to see it. Her expression cracked for a fraction of a second, just enough for him to glimpse. It fear not of him, not a danger, fear of hope. I don't want your hope, she whispered. I know, he said, but it's still yours. She turned away for the first time. Her eyes wandered to the window. Rain tracing pounced down the glass like forgotten memories. Outside, New York raced on, relentless, alive, indifferent. Inside, time had collapsed into breathless stillness. She set the wine glass down. What's your name? Caleb. She nodded. And what exactly do you want in return? For this? Generosity? He hesitated, then answered, nothing. She laughed again. But this time it was small, hollow, a sound made of wounds. There's always a price. Not for me. He replied, I already paid mine. Before she could question, he slipped a plain card from his pocket and set it beside her untouched. Dessert, just a name and number, stark and simple. I'll be here until the end of the month, he said. After that, I don't know, but if you ever decide to stop pretending, call me. He turned. You know I could have you fired, she said. He paused but didn't look back. I know. Why risk that? He exhaled, a ghost of a smile in his voice, because someone once risked the same for me, and it saved my life. And then he vanished through the velvet curtain, past the magnate who didn't dare speak, into the hush of the back hallway. That night, Tiffany sat motionless for a long time. She didn't touch the card, but she didn't throw it away either. And when her driver wheeled her out to the car, her hand found something tucked deep in her coat pocket. She didn't remember placing it there, elsewhere. In a cramped apartment bathed in the golden scent of autumn and roasted peanuts drifting from a street cart below, Caleb leaned against his chip kitchen counter, sipping tea from a mug that had seen better years. At the table, his daughter, Emma, colored in silence, her socked feet swinging gently. "You were late," she murmured without looking up. "Got caught in a conversation." He replied, "Was it with that lady again?" He didn't answer immediately. Emma's eyes lifted, only 7, but somehow ancient. "She's sad," she said softly. "I saw her last week. She looks like she forgot how to smile." Caleb's smile was faint, worn. "Some people carry heavy things you can't see, kiddo. Like Mommy." His hand paused. "Yeah," he said quietly, "like Mommy, for years ago." He watched his wife, Kara, fierce and fearless, lose herself after a miscarriage. She awoke one day claiming her legs no longer worked. The VA doctors had no answers. Conversion disorder, they whispered. Trauma made flesh. Pain made paralysis. They couldn't heal what they couldn't name. But Caleb hadn't walked away. He learned. He studied. He stayed. Inch by inch, he held her through the tremors, through the silence, through the invisible war inside her body. And one day she walked. She joined Doctors Without Borders. 6 months later, she died on a rain-slicked road in Haiti. Gone. Just like that. But what she left behind wasn't only Emma. She left fire, quiet but enduring. A knowing that sometimes the deepest wounds don't bleed, but break you anyway. And only someone who's been broken can help others rebuild. Back at her townhouse, Tiffany sat alone, still, silent. Her home was perfect, cold, designed with precision, but it had no warmth, no life. She wheeled to the full-length mirror in the hallway. Her reflection was flawless, except for her eyes. She stared at her legs, reflexes. She muttered, "What does he know?" But her heart stirred, not with anger, something far more dangerous. Recognition. Because Caleb Miller had seen her, not as broken, but as someone who could be whole. 2 days later, he was back at work, mop gliding across marble like a silent symphony, earbuds and no music. He liked the rhythm of the place. It reminded him of field hospitals, chaos hidden beneath order. He didn't expect to see her again. But near 9 p.m., the magnate approached. "She requested you." Caleb blinked. "Are you sure?" She said if it wasn't you, she'd leave. He wiped his hands, peeled off the apron, and stepped into the VIP room. Tiffany sat there, same poise, same elegance. But something had shifted. Her eyes held a softness, or maybe a storm. "You asked for me. I'd have questions." He nodded. "Ask away." She studied him like something rare, dangerous. "Did she ever forgive you, Caleb?" His breath caught. Whoever. It was you couldn't save." He didn't flinch. "She didn't need to," he said. "She saved herself. I just held the light long enough for her to find the door." Tiffany looked away. "What if I try, and I can't? Then we try again. And if I fall, I'll be there. And if I hate you for what you find in me." He smiled, small, steady. "True. Then I'll still be there." Silence stretched between them. Then, finally, she whispered the most terrifying words she had in years. "Okay, let's begin." The next morning, sunlight poured through her sitting room. Caleb rolled out a yoga mat. "You've got a lot of rules for someone who said yes," he teased. "I don't like surprises," she said stiffly. "I'm not a magician, just a man with a mop and a memory." She didn't laugh. Not really, but her lips twitched. She rolled closer in her blazer and slacks, poised as ever. "First rule," she said, "you don't touch me without permission, understood? Second, no pity, wouldn't dream of it. And third," her eyes locked with his, "if I say stop, you stop. Fair." He knelt and unzipped a small duffel resistance. Bands, a mirror, a towel, and a worn notebook. She frowned. "What's that?" He ran his fingers over the weathered cover. My wife's journal. Let the healing begin. She traced every step of her journey, the stumbles, the hesitations, the painfully earned progress, as though the act of recording it could anchor her back to herself. I thought it might remind you that you're not alone, Caleb said, offering her the worn journal like it was both invitation and truth. Tiffany stared at the notebook like it was something alive, like it might bare its teeth and bite. She made it through? She asked cautiously. Caleb nodded. She did, and then she walked straight into a jungle clinic without hesitation, because that's who she was. A long pause, and then softly, tremulously, Tiffany asked, and she died. His eyes lifted to meet hers, tender but unflinching. Yeah, but not in that chair, and not with fear in her heart. The words landed heavy in the room, so absolute they left no space for questions. They began with something simple. Close your eyes, Caleb said gently. Just breathe. Tiffany scoffed. I didn't ask for a meditation session. No, he replied, steady as stone. But your body forgot what safety feels like. Breathing helps it remember. She shot him a long, unreadable look, but she obeyed. The room fell quiet, sacred in its stillness. Caleb watched the tension curve around her mouth, noticed the slight twitch beneath her right thumb, the tiny flutter of her toes as the sunlight kissed her knees, little cracks, hairline fractures in the armor she wore so carefully. He just had to help her see them. That evening, after Caleb had gone, Tiffany sat alone in the same sunlit room. The house felt different, not warmer, not brighter, but less sterile, as if something in the atmosphere had shifted, barely perceptible, yet deeply real. She rolled into her study. Past shelves that once dictated her world lined with financial blueprints, legal tomes, SDA/RTUP manifestos, manuals of control, domination, predictability. But her eyes drifted to a forgotten corner. There, beneath a layer of dust, sat a photo of her as a child, her father's rusted toolbox, and a violin case that hadn't been touched since college. Her hand hovered over a dot, too much dot too soon. She turned away and poured half a glass of bourbon instead, stared at it for a long moment, then pushed it across the counter. You're changing, she murmured to herself. God help me. The next session, Caleb noticed the shift immediately. No designer blazer, no heels, just a plain white t-shirt, yoga pants, and bare feet. No mask, just Tiffany. He didn't mention it. He simply nodded in acknowledgement, like a silent pact had been formed. They resumed breathwork, subtle stretches, mirror work. Why the mirror? She asked, almost suspicious. So you can watch yourself healing. He replied simply, I hate mirrors. Then maybe that's exactly where we start. Silence followed, long and charged. Then she broke it. Do you want to know what happened? Caleb looked up, surprised but calm. Only if you want to tell me. Her gaze was locked on her reflection hands, gripping the chair's armrest like lifelines. I didn't fall, she said. Caleb didn't speak, didn't blink. I jumped, she clarified, voice paper thin. I didn't want to die, she added quickly. I just wanted him to stop looking at me like I was furniture. Your husband? He asked. She nodded once, tight and bitter. He loved the spotlight, the adoration. But me, I was just aesthetic, profitable, replaceable. Her jaw clenched, and after the jump, he didn't come to the hospital, just sent flowers and a lawyer. Caleb's hands rested calmly on his knees. That's not your shame to carry, he said gently. She gave a hollow laugh. Tell that to the voice in my head for the past 5 years. He leaned in, voice low, but firm enough to slice through. Shadow, Tiffany, you didn't lose your legs. You surrendered them. Her eyes flashed. But that means, he continued softly, you can take them back. That night, she sat before her grand piano and instruments silent for years. Her fingers hovered over the dustless keys like they were relics from a life she no longer owned. Then she pressed one dot, then another, and another. The fragile notes echoed through the hallways, rushing past steel and marble like whispers of something once beloved. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, she didn't see the chair, She saw herself at 19 barefoot, alive, laughing playing in her dorm room while her roommate sang off-key beside her. She didn't feel broken. She just felt unfinished. The park the next morning was nearly deserted, bathed in a soft watercolor mist. Autumn had arrived like a sigh, brushing the trees with rust and gold and gentle resignation. Tiffany sat beneath a crooked elm near the duck pond, wrapped in a heavy coat and thick gloves she didn't need. Her sunglasses hid her eyes, though there was no sun. She had told her assistant she needed air. She hadn't said she hoped to see him. On the far end of the park, Caleb jogged up the hill. Emma, his daughter, bounced beside him, one small hand gripping his hoodie, the other dragging a battered doll. Just 10 minutes, Daddy. She had begged earlier. Lucy needs fresh air. She's a doll. Caleb had chuckled. She's a doll with cold feet. That's not how feet work. Emma had tilted her head, dead serious. You fix people's feelings, but you don't get dolls. He had laughed, loud and real. That was the sound Tiffany heard first, the laugh. She didn't turn. She didn't need to. Caleb saw her, slow dot, but Emma had already darted forward. Tiffany looked up just in time to see a little girl standing in front of her, eyes bright with recognition. I know you, Emma beamed. You had dinner with my daddy at the fancy place. Tiffany arched an eyebrow. Dinner? Well, Emma admitted, you sat and he cleaned. But I still call it dinner, despite herself. Tiffany smirked. She doesn't usually talk to strangers, Caleb said, catching up, winded. I think Lucy vouched for you, he added. Nodding toward the doll dot, Emma held her up. She said you look like someone who needs a friend. Tiffany studied the doll mismatched button eyes. A frayed ribbon where hair used to be, one her barely stitched on. What happened to her? She asked. Emma shrugged. She's been through stuff. Why not get a new one? Emma looked scandalized. Because this one knows my secrets. Tiffany stared, silent, then extended a hand. May I? Emma solemnly placed Lucy into her hands. Tiffany held the doll like it was something sacred. You fixed her, she whispered, pointing at the mended stitches and patched belly. I didn't want her to feel left out just because she's broken, Emma said simply. Broken things are still people. Caleb said nothing. His chest tightened. Tiffany's voice trembled. Who told you that? Emma shrugged. Mommy used to say it. The words hit Caleb like a punch to the ribs. He'd never told Emma much about Kara's illness, just that Mommy's heart had been very sad, and somehow she'd understood more than he'd ever said. Do you want her to keep you company for a while? Emma asked. What? You look like someone who's lonely. On the inside. That's worse than outside lonely. Tiffany blinked hard. I don't know what to say. You don't have to, Emma said. Lucy doesn't talk much either. That's why they get along. Tiffany let out a small laugh, and unfamiliar warmth blooming in her chest. Later, when Emma skipped off toward the ducks, Caleb sat beside her on the bench. He didn't speak, just let the silence breathe. She's extraordinary, Tiffany said. She takes after her mom. A pause. I've never been good with kids. That's because most people forget they used to be one. She looked at him through her sunglasses, narrowed. You talk like a janitor who swallowed a therapist. He grinned. I mop up more than floors. She shook her head, but a smile tugged at her lips. She held up the doll. Do you know what she told me? Caleb nodded. That broken things are still people? Tiffany's voice faltered. I haven't felt like a person in years. More like a museum exhibit, beautiful, untouchable, unfeeling, but not unfixable, Caleb said. She didn't respond, just watched Emma waving at ducks. I used to be her, she whispered, loud, brave, curious, before the headlines, before I let the wrong people define my worth. Caleb stayed quiet. She looked down at the doll again. I'm tired of being untouchable. That night, Tiffany placed Lucy on the windowsill. It should have looked ridiculous, a grown woman in a child's toy. But when she drew the curtains and turned out the lights, for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. And in the hush, she whispered words she hadn't dared say in ages. Maybe broken isn't the end. You're 5 minutes late. Her voice sliced the morning stillness, sharp as ever. Caleb barely glanced at the clock. Traffic. This is a private residence, not a bus stop, she said coolly. He dropped his bag, raised a brow. Would it help if I apologized? No, she snapped. It would help if you respected my time. He nodded slowly. Duly noted. Then he knelt and unrolled the mat. So, what's on the agenda today? Sarcasm or stretching? She narrowed her eyes. I'm not here to be mocked, and I'm not here to be managed. He replied calmly. So let's agree to meet somewhere. In the Midland, remember why we're doing this. You assume I need reminding. No, he said gently. I assume you're scared. Her face remained stone still, but her fingers twitched against the armrest. Let's begin, she said coldly. They moved through simple exercises, motor control, micro shifts. Flex your toes. I am. No, he said. You're trying. Trying and doing aren't the same, she hissed. Remind me why I let a janitor insult me 3 times a week. Because I'm the only one who tells you the truth. She glared at him. He smiled. And for just a moment, she smiled back. But it didn't last. When he asked her to lean forward just 2 inches, something inside her snapped. I said no. She barked. I told you I can't. Let me try first. My wife used to scream in her sleep, Caleb said, his voice low, almost reverent in the hush of the room. She'd wake up stiff with terror, eyes wild, clutching at nothing, begging me to tell her it wasn't real. But it was, every night for nearly a year. He paused, the words lingering like smoke, across from him. Tiffany Ward sat rigid in her wheelchair, face composed, but eyes storming with restrained fire. For months, her anger had flickered beneath her skin like a dying star, never bright enough to destroy, but too hot to ignore. What healed her? She asked, breath sharp and brittle. Time? No, he said quietly. Patience. And truth? She inhaled, sharp and cold. Then tell me the truth. Caleb met her gaze, steady as stone. You're not broken. Tiffany flinched. You're protecting yourself, he continued. This paralysis, it's not weakness. It's a fortress. Your mind built a wall so high, even you can't see over it anymore. She swallowed hard. Her voice was a blade. So what? You think you're going to tear it down? No, he said. I think you are. She turned sharply, wheeled toward the window, needing something solid to stare at. Outside, the trees swayed gently in the wind. To free, to alive, her reflection in the glass loomed upright, controlled, untouchable, but inside, she was a flickering light bulb. One careless word from going out entirely. I don't want your pity, she whispered, barely audible. He didn't flinch. You think that's what this is? I don't know, she said. But pity feels a lot like love, with the respect scraped off. Caleb rose slowly to his feet. Then let me make it clear. I don't pity you. I see you, and if that terrifies you, it's probably because no one else ever did. His words hit like thunder, echoing in the hollow space where she'd buried the parts of herself she had long refused to face. That night, hours after Caleb had gone, Tiffany sat alone in the echoing silence of her sitting room, her legs lifeless as ever, her heart sprinting, and she hated him, hated the way he peeled back her armor, hated that he saw her, truly saw her. Worst of all, she hated that some deep, dormant part of her wanted him to. That night, she dreamed. She was on the rooftop of her childhood home in Vermont. The sky was bathed in lavender dusk. Her father was there, laughing in that full-bellied way only fathers can. He handed her a hammer, the old shingles beneath their feet brittle with time. You're strong, Tiff, he said. You just forgot where you put it. She awoke, before dawn, drenched in sweat, tears drying on her cheeks for the first time in 5 long years. She whispered into the dark, "Don't give up on me." The next morning, Caleb arrived 15 minutes early. She opened the door herself. No assistant, no chauffeur, just Tiffany barefaced and barefoot in a cardigan and leggings, her hair tied back in a loose knot. He raised an eyebrow. Am I hallucinating? Or did the queen just answer her own door? Don't get used to it, she said, but the faintest smile flickered beneath her words. He stepped inside and noticed the subtle rebellion. No blazer, no heels, no mask, just her. I thought. She hesitated. I thought we could try the floor today. His eyebrows lifted. Are you sure? No, she admitted, voice raw. But I'm tired of pretending that chair is my throne. Caleb exhaled. Slowly. That's the first step choosing to dethrone the lie. She shifted from the chair to the mat, every movement shaky, hesitant, but determined. Caleb moved instinctively to steady her, but she held up a hand. Let me try first. He stepped back, and for the first time in half a decade, Tiffany Ward moved, not far, not fast, but forward. She lay flat on the mat, breath shallow, body buzzing with effort. Sunlight streamed through the windows, tracing gentle shadows across the hardwood. Outside, the sycamores murmured in the breeze. Inside, something quieter, something more profound stirred. Tell me what you feel, Caleb asked gently. Humiliation. She muttered, jaw clenched. Then softer, more precise, tension, lower back, quads. He nodded. That's progress. She scoffed. That's pain. It's proof, he said, voice steady. Muscles that don't work don't hold tension. She opened her eyes, stared at the ceiling. So what? You think I've been faking this? No, Caleb said calmly. I think your mind told a story, and your body believed it. She turned to him, eyes sharp. You think that's comforting? I think it means you're not powerless, he replied, and that scares you more than the chair. Tiffany's voice darkened. You don't get to say that. I do, he answered, unwavering, because I've seen that same fear in my wife's eyes. I stood right where you are, waiting to be pushed away, because healing was more terrifying than pain. She whispered into the silence. You keep saying she healed, but what if I'm not her? You're not, he said. You're you, and you're still here, which means some part of you still believes this isn't the end. The next day, she was quieter, more brittle, sharp-edged and evasive. You're pulling away, Caleb said gently during their session. What's going on? She didn't answer, stared out the window instead. It's nothing. That's a lie. She exhaled hard. Fine. I saw a headline. One of the gossip blogs. Tiffany Ward's $1 million wheels. Fashion or fantasy. Her voice dripped with bitterness. They're mocking me again. Always. They don't care what I've been through. They just want blood. Then give them silence, he said, not surrender. She looked away again. They'll never see me as anything but a scandal in heels. No, Caleb replied. They'll see what? You show them. And what do I show them? Caleb, huh? Her voice cracked. That I spent 5 years hiding behind leather and marble? That I let them think I was untouchable because I was too ashamed to admit. I crumbled. You show them, he whispered, that you're not afraid to begin again. That evening, Tiffany sat at her piano. She didn't play, just stared at her reflection in the lacquered wood hair slightly undone. Eyes tired, but somehow alive. Something in her posture had changed. She'd moved 3 inches today. On her own. It wasn't much, but it was something. She touched her thigh gently, cautiously, half afraid it would feel like nothing. But it didn't. She felt it. The next morning, she was already on the mat when Caleb arrived. No makeup, no mask, just her. You're early, he said. I had a nightmare. He paused, setting down his bag. Do you want to talk about it? I was walking, she said, but no one noticed. Not one person. I fought so hard to stand, but I was invisible. He sat beside her. What do you think it meant? I'm scared, she said, eyes glossy, that when I finally walk again, it won't matter, that I'll still feel alone. You won't be. How can you be so sure? Because the people who see you now, who really see you, aren't looking at your legs. She felt quiet. Then, almost as softly to hear, thank you. He met her eyes. For what? For not looking away. That session, something had shifted. She pushed harder, her guard lowered. When he asked her to drag a towel across the mat with her foot, she tried. Jaw clenched, muscles trembled. The towel moved just a little, but it moved. Do it again, he said. She did, and again, and again. By the fourth attempt, her breath came in gasps. Her eyes shimmered. I didn't think I could, she whispered. I did, he said. She looked at him, and something in her gaze cracked wide open, raw, stunned, almost reverent. I haven't felt my body fight for me in years, she said. It's like it remembered me, because you finally gave it permission that night. She opened a drawer and pulled out an old photograph, her father, grinning, arm draped around her shoulder, her in paint-splattered overalls, barefoot, makeup-free, smiling like the world was still hers. She touched the photo. I'm still in here, she whispered. But as light began to return, darkness slithered in. A message blinked on her phone, a known number. You think this makes you a hero. You're still a fraud. Some things don't deserve second chances. The words slammed into her like iron. Her legs felt heavy again, like shackles. She didn't show up the next day, or the one after. By the third, Caleb stood outside her townhouse, staring at the lifeless windows. He rang. Once. Twice. Silence. Something was wrong, out loud wrong. Quiet wrong. The kind of silence that weighs more than any scream. Inside, Tiffany sat in darkness, curtains drawn, phone face down. It had buzzed a dozen times. Caleb, her assistant. Someone she suspected was Emma. She hadn't moved from the couch in 2 days. You're still a fraud. The message played on a loop, cruel and unrelenting. Because it wasn't just hate. It was confirmation. Confirmation of what she'd feared all along. That even at her most honest, she was still a performance piece, a scandal in a $15,000 chair. A leader who hadn't led herself anywhere in 5 years. The next morning, Caleb didn't ring. He waited. At 9:58 a.m., the door cracked open. Tiffany stood there barely, pale, hollow-eyed, dressed in a robe, bracing herself against the frame, her legs like iron rods, but standing. Why are you here? She asked. Her voice cracked glass. Caleb inhaled once, deeply. Because I didn't come this far just to be part of your before and after picture. She flinched. I'm not doing this anymore, she whispered, turning away. Why? Her voice came soft and stripped of pretense. Because I'm terrified none of this matters. Caleb stepped inside, shut the door. You're afraid of the wrong thing, he said. Oh, enlighten me, she snapped. You're afraid of not mattering, he said. But what you should be afraid of is never trying again. She turned to him, tears clinging to her lashes. They don't know me, Caleb. They don't know what I've lived through. Then show them. I tried, she choked out. And the second I did, someone reminded me that my worst chapter still defines me. He sat down in front of her. Tiffany, he said, voice low and steady. We don't get to choose who haunts us, but we do choose who we believe. She looked down, voice trembling. What if the voice that haunts me is mine? The silence between them thickened. Caleb nodded. Then let's teach her how to speak again. They didn't do therapy that day. They just sat, facing each other, human, bruised, real, and finally, beginning answers. Caleb's fingers brushed the spine of a well-worn journal, its pages swollen with time, its edges curled from being turned too often. He opened it with reverence, landing on a dog-eared page smudged by old fingerprints and maybe a tear or two. She wrote this 3 months before she stood. He murmured, eyes soft with memory. Tiffany leaned closer, breath caught somewhere between skepticism and hope. Caleb read aloud, voice steady but haunted. Today I felt a twitch, just one, but it was mine, not the doctor's, not the diagnosis. It belonged to me, and it told me you're still in there. Tiffany closed her eyes. The words curled around her like smoke, painful and impossible to ignore. I'm tired of being a symbol, she whispered. Her voice cracked under the weight of everything she pretended not to feel. Caleb's lips lifted into the faintest of smiles, then stopped being one. Be a person instead. A shaky laugh escaped her lips, half disbelief, half despair. That's the hardest thing anyone's ever asked me to do. No, he said gently. It's just the first honest thing. Later, as he packed his things to leave, Tiffany appeared in the doorway. She stood, leaning heavily, but not as fragile as before. There was a new tension in her frame, like something waking from hibernation. "Caleb," she said, barely more than a breath. He turned, sensing the weight in her voice before hearing the words. "If I fall again, I don't think I'll get back up." His gaze met hers, steady, warm, unflinching. The kind of look that steadied a storm without a single word. "Then I'll sit beside you," he said, "until you're ready to try again." That night, Tiffany stood in front of the mirror for a long time. No designer armor, no curated face, just her bare, exhausted, and vulnerable. A flicker of something so faint it was almost sorrow danced behind her eyes. Or maybe it was hope. She reached for her phone, typed a name, then hesitated, deleted it. She scrolled, opened her contacts, and sent a message instead. "Tomorrow, 9 a.m. I'm ready." The next morning, the piano room felt changed. The curtains had been drawn open. Light poured in like an offering. A breeze wandered in through the open terrace doors, and the mat was already unrolled. Tiffany sat on it, silent, waiting. When Caleb entered, she didn't greet him. She simply said, "I had a dream. I stood in front of a crowd, shaking. Everyone was watching, and I hated it. But then, someone reached out, not to applaud, just to hold." She paused. Her eyes met his. "It was you." That session, Tiffany didn't just move, she fought. Her hands trembled, her knees locked, and her breath snagged on fear. But when Caleb said, "Push," she did. When he said, "Breathe," she obeyed. And when he whispered, "You are not a fraud," she broke, tears spilling freely, not from weakness, but release. Because in that rupture, something sacred was unearthed. Beneath the steel, the silence, the story, there she was, Tiffany. Not a figurehead, not a tragedy, just alive. Outside, the sky had shifted to a soft slate blue, full of quiet promise. Inside, she was becoming. The following days blurred into a rhythm of effort and sweat. Tiffany was on the mat before sunrise, now no pretense, no assistant, just her. Her voice was quiet when she looked up at him. "I couldn't sleep." He dropped his bag beside her, hopes noisy after silence. She shot him a side glance. "Do you practice these lines in the mirror?" "Nope," he grinned. "I just live with a 7-year-old philosopher who sleeps with a half-blind doll and tells me broken things still matter." Tiffany laughed, and it felt like something cracked open, something good. "I think your daughter might be smarter than both of us." "She is." They began with core work, small, almost invisible movements. Most people wouldn't have noticed, but Tiffany did. She felt every twitch, every shift of muscle long forgotten. Each moment was a prayer answered by her body. At one point, she stumbled. Caleb moved instinctively to catch her. "No," she gasped. "Let me fall if I need to. I have to know what I can catch." He stepped back, watched. She wobbled. Corrected. And stood. A small miracle, but the way she smiled, sweat slicked and fierce, it felt like sunrise. Later, they sat on the mat, silence stretching comfortably between them. Tiffany looked down at her bare legs. "I don't know who this woman is," she said quietly. Caleb met her eyes. "I do. She's not Tiffany Ward, CEO. Nope. She's not a victim. No." "Then who is she?" He smiled. "She's becoming." That afternoon, they moved to the terrace. A plunge pool glistened in the sun. "Water therapy," Caleb suggested. "I figured," Tiffany said, "if I'm going to fall, I'd rather it not hurt." She wore a sleek black one-piece. Her arms bore the strength of weeks of work. As she slipped into the water, she felt the fear cling to her and then wash away. Caleb stood at the edge, giving her space. "Water remembers," he said, "how to move without fear, how to feel weightless again." She floated, eyes closed, face to the sky. Then gently at first she kicked, again, stronger. Caleb watched, wonder blooming across his face. "I think I'm swimming," she laughed, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. "You are." She turned to him. "I forgot what it felt like to be alive in my own body, Her voice broke. I'm not borrowing someone else's life anymore. That evening, Tiffany handed Caleb an envelope. He opened it, confused. Inside a note to Emma, in loopy script, from the woman who didn't believe in dolls until one saved her life. P.S. Lucy's new ear is holding up beautifully. Below it, a check, made out to the Hope Foundation for Family Healing, enough to build it from scratch, enough to dream again. Caleb's eyes widened. I can't accept this. You already have, she said, every time you walked through my door and refused to walk away. It's too much, he whispered. It's not charity, she replied. It's repayment. For what? For showing me I wasn't paralyzed. Just paused. That night, he sat at his kitchen table, Emma fast asleep. He reread the note, then texted Tiffany, "You're walking." Her reply came instantly, "Not yet, but I'm dancing in my dreams." The next morning, in the water, she walked to full steps, unassisted, smiling through her tears, not because she'd arrived, but because she'd finally started. The gala was glittering, cold, excessive, everything wealth loved to be. Chandeliers spilled light like champagne. Musicians whispered Vivaldi into crystal air. And Tiffany Ward arrived, wielded by her assistant. Regal, composed, dressed in midnight blue. A woman of porcelain and steel dot, they whispered like always. Headlines, pity, curiosity. They didn't know. Not yet. Dot at the back, Caleb stood with Emma, who wore a lopsided bow and socks that didn't match. Her name tag red hope in glitter ink. She looks like a queen, Emma whispered. She is, Caleb replied. Midway through, Tiffany was asked to speak. Her assistant moved to help. Tiffany held up a hand. I'll walk. The room froze. Are you sure? The assistant whispered. Yes, she said. She placed her hands on the armrests and stood. Gasps. Silence. She took one step, then another, heels whispering against marble. By the time she reached the podium, no one dared to breathe. There was a time, she began, voice steady, when I believed standing still was strength. She paused, but stillness isn't strength, it's fear, dressed in silk, masked in marble. She looked out at them, all titans of industry, patrons of science, and let them see her fully. I spent 5 years in a wheelchair, not because I couldn't walk, but because I was terrified of what trying might cost me. Silence became reverence. I made my pain look like elegance. My silence looked like dignity, and it nearly killed me. In the back, Caleb stood rooted. His eyes brimmed. Tonight, I'm not here as a CEO or survivor. I'm here as a woman who remembered her own name, the one only hope dares to whisper. She looked up, voice soft. Healing doesn't ask for permission. It only asks for one foolish, brave moment where you say yes. Applause shattered the quiet, but Tiffany didn't hear it. She only saw Emma beaming, both hands in the air, and Caleb, mouthing, "You did it." She nodded. We did. Later, on the terrace, barefoot and free, Tiffany dangled her legs over the ledge. Caleb joined her, handing her tea. "You're full of surprises," he said. "You're full of metaphors. Guess we're even." They sat in companionable silence. Then Tiffany turned. "When I stood tonight, I didn't feel proud or strong, just free." Caleb nodded slowly. "Freedom doesn't come from walking," he said. "No," she replied. "It comes from deciding to stop sitting still." She looked at him, something raw and new in her gaze. "You know the scariest part of tonight?" "What?" "That after everything, it worked." He looked at her. "You mean you worked?" She leaned against his shoulder, the weight of years falling between them. "I'm tired," she whispered, "of standing alone, and for the first time in forever." She didn't have to. 3 days had passed since the gala, yet the world still reverberated with the echo of a single moment. Tiffany Ward standing. It wasn't just a movement, it was a quiet revolution, wrapped in trembling strength. The crowd's breath had caught as silence blanketed the room, broken only by her voice, shaking yet resolute. In that instant, Tiffany didn't deliver a speech, she reclaimed a life. The video went viral. Headlines roared, from wheelchair to warrior. Tiffany Ward stuns the world, CEO or survivor? Tiffany Ward redefines both. Healing, captured on camera. But as the internet lit up with praise and punditry, Tiffany found solace not in noise, but in stillness. She sat alone in her sunroom, the morning light brushing softly against her bare face, legs curled beneath her. A chipped mug of coffee cradled in her palms, the same mug she hadn't touched since grad school. The world outside was buzzing, inbox bursting with messages, donations flooding her foundation. But her eyes weren't on screens. They were fixed on a text message from her mother. You stood taller than I've ever seen you, and you didn't even need heels. I'm proud of the daughter I once feared I lost. Tears well, unsummoned. She blinked once, letting her mother's words sink into the corners of her heart, untouched even by therapy. It wasn't just approval, it was homecoming. That afternoon, she found herself at the Hope Center, a nonprofit Caleb had been quietly volunteering with. It was humble borrowed space in a church basement, scuffed linoleum floors, paint peeling like old stories, but there was light in every corner, a warmth that no budget could buy. Caleb looked up as she walked in, cane in hand not for dependence, but for rhythm. You're early, he said. I'm learning, she answered, not to keep the world waiting on me. He grinned, still dramatic, though old habits. She quipped, smirking. They moved through the space together. Caleb stopped at a room where a teen girl in a neck brace was laughing through a puzzle with a nurse. She hasn't smiled in a week, he murmured. Until now. Tiffany stood quietly, absorbing it all. What would it cost, she asked, to make this permanent? He raised an eyebrow. More than a viral moment. Her gaze met his. Good thing I'm not living in moments anymore. That evening, Tiffany sat in a plush studio chair beneath hot lights for a nationally syndicated talk show. The host leaned in, eyebrows arched with curiosity. People are calling this a miracle, she said. Would you? Tiffany's smile was faint, but grounded. I'd call it something harder than a miracle. I'd call it work. The audience applauded. The host pressed further. But doctors told you you'd never walk again. Where did you find the strength? Her reply was soft, unwavering. The strength wasn't in my legs. It was in letting someone see me when I couldn't bear to see myself. A pause. And who was that someone? She turned to the camera, eyes listening. A janitor with calloused hands, a grieving heart, and more wisdom than every specialist I ever hired. The clip reached over 20 million views in today's not because it was polished, but because it was true. And in a world obsessed with filters, truth has a gravity of its own. On a cool Saturday morning, Tiffany arrived at a local elementary school. Emma's class was hosting a community day, and though Caleb hadn't mentioned it, Emma had sent Tiffany a handmade card, scrawled in crayon. You're my walking hero. Tiffany chuckled when she saw it, now standing awkwardly by the bake sale table. She felt like a freshman again, lost in the crowd. This is where fame brought you? Caleb teased, offering her a cupcake. I was promised luxury, got lemon poppy seed instead. Emma bounded over, Lucy the doll in hand. Miss Tiffany, can I show you my project? Tiffany knelt slowly, no wheelchair. No assistant tan smiled. Lead the way. Taped to the hallway wall was a crayon drawing, a stick figure standing. From a chair, above it, in crooked handwriting. Sometimes heroes don't wear capes. They wear courage. Tiffany blinked, then pulled Emma into her arms before the tears could speak. Later, as the crowd dispersed and the sun spilled its final warmth across the sidewalk, Tiffany and Caleb walked side by side. Do you regret it? He asked suddenly, the speech, the spotlight. She shook her head slowly. No, I regret the silence I sat in for so long. You've changed, he said quietly. No, she replied. I've just stopped hiding. They reached his car. Neither moved to enter. Tiffany turned, face open, earnest. I never said thank you. You don't have to. But I do, she whispered. Not just for helping me walk, but for reminding me I was still worth saving. She stepped closer. Caleb. Her voice trembled with clarity. I don't want to walk alone anymore. His breath caught, Are you sure? She nodded. Because for the first time, I know where I'm going. And then, slowly, she leaned and not out of desperation. Not for a cinematic spark, but like the sun greeting morning. Their kiss was a quiet promise. A beginning. The grand opening of the Hope Center was bigger than anyone had imagined. Caleb stood near the parking lot, stunned by the flow of cars, kids tugging at parents, volunteers scrambling. Half the town's here, he muttered. Half the state, maybe. Tiffany replied beside him. She wore an ivory blouse, no cane, her hair catching the morning light. He glanced at her, nervous. I used to fear silence in a room, she said. Now I just listen for the heartbeat. He laughed. You always talk like a poet before. Breakfast. Only on days that matter. Inside, the center pulsed with energy, mural-lined walls, the smell of fresh paint, the sound of children's laughter. One mural, painted by Tiffany from Emma's chosen quote, showed a girl holding hands with a woman rising from a chair. Beneath it, healing isn't about returning to who you were. It's about becoming who you were meant to be. Caleb stood at the ribbon with her, ceremonial scissors in hand. Ready. Wait. Tiffany stepped forward, taking the mic. This center isn't here because of money or media, she said. It's here because a man who mopped floors believed in something louder than silence. He gave it a name. The crowd hushed. He gave it hope. Caleb swallowed hard, eyes glassy. And he didn't do it for applause. He did it because love moves quiet and steady. Without permission, she turned. Caleb Morgan, you didn't just help me walk. You helped me live. He dropped the scissors, took her hand. Together, they opened the doors. Children rushed in first. Families followed. Cameras clicked. Someone played an old piano in the background. Later, they stood on a balcony overlooking the city, alone, until Caleb joined her. Nice speech. He said, thanks. I winged it. Silence wrapped around them like wind. Then Tiffany turned to him, eyes gleaming. You know, the first time I saw you, I thought you were just a janitor. He smirked. I was. No, you were more. You were a mirror. And I didn't like what I saw in myself until you saw something better. I saw a woman with fire in her eyes, he said, voice cracking. She just forgot she still had matches. She laughed real and then held out her hand. Dance with me. He hesitated. There's no music. There's wind. There's light. That's enough. And they danced slow, deliberate, shadows twirling gently across the terrace. Two souls, once shattered, now woven back together in a rhythm only they could hear. I'd never dreamed of this, she whispered. Me neither, he said. And yet, here we are. Weeks passed. Life went on. But something shifted in the diner. A waitress picked up Tiffany's story and dialed her estranged mother in a hospital. A weary veteran whispered he was ready to try again. And in a small bedroom glowing with plastic stars, Emma lay nestled between Tiffany and Caleb's tiny hand. In each of theirs, Caleb whispered, she's going to be all right. Tiffany smiled in the dark. She already is, and so are we, outside. The moon hummed full and generous. A breeze danced through the open window, and inside, 3 hearts beat in perfect time, not waiting to walk, already dancing in the light. If this story found you, breathe it in. Let it live in you, because sometimes a single kindness is enough to rewrite a life. Wherever you are, your story matters too. And if this one touched yours, stay kind, stay hopeful, and remember love, real. Love rewrites every ending.